What is up? What is going on? How are you guys doing? I'm doing okay. Thank you for asking. Anyway, I came across a video. Well, I didn't come across a video. YouTube has a way of feeding you things off to the side. Like, you might be interested in this. So I just clicked on it. It was a video by this other tile guy that I had never heard of before. He doesn't have a whole lot of subscribers. I think it's like maybe 400 or 500 subscribers. So I'm asking you right now, like when you see his name and all that stuff, subscribe to him because he's actually very, very good at what he does. Young guy. Looks to be young anyway. So I was interested in this video, and it's not too long. It's about 20 minutes. I'll drag it out to an hour because I have to talk. Duh. But it was very on point. There was a lot of spot on type of stuff. It is basically a shower failure, meaning that 99.99999% of showers that fail at ankle below. Ankle below, never the walls. Never the walls. Could happen in 0.0001%. 0.1% or something, but you know, as a rule, it's always ankle below. So that is what I call a shower pan redo. I get called to do something like that maybe at least once a year, sometimes twice a year. There's been an occasion where it's been 3 times a year, but that's going back in history. I think material and expertise and knowledge and all that stuff has exponentially, leaps and bounds, gone forward so well that I don't get those calls that often anymore. Back 24 years ago, I was getting them all the time. I do a shower pan redo at least 6 times a year. Anyway, that's what he's doing. He's doing a shower pan redo because the shower pan failed, specifically the curb. And there's a lot of reasons why it fails, the least of which there's no waterproofing. So, and I don't know the type of house makeup. I don't know if it was in a subdivision. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff I don't know. But typically in a subdivision, and they have tracts of houses that might number anywhere from, 40, 50, up to a couple of hundred houses. They build the house next door to you left and right the same exact way. It may be a different layout, but the building process is the same way. Therefore, the tile guy, the plumbing guy, everybody does the same type of job on every house in the subdivision. So when you have one failure, your neighbors are going to have the same failure if they didn't already. And that's what I anticipate happen here, only because, going forward in time, like I said, we have waterproofing and different methods and stuff like that. And this guy who built this shower kind of did it the old-fashioned way, which was on a time clock. And that time clock varies. I don't recall him saying anything about how long the shower lasted, but it looks to be a custom shower as opposed to a cookie cutter neighborhood type of shower. He did an excellent job at the repair. Having said that, he used Schluter. And I'm not an advocate of Schluter, and in no way, shape, or form am I even an expert. I've never been to the school. I have no desire to go to the school. They offer them all the time. They offer them for free. They pay for your lunch. They pay for hotel, whatever, because at the end of the day, Schluter wants sales weasels, and that's who you are. The typical Schluter rep, okay, gets somewhere between about $80,000 to $150,000 a year, plus bonuses. So if you are a regional rep or something like that, you're making a whole lot more. I've seen numbers at 200,000, 220. But even at the starting level, at 100,000 average, 100,000 a year, do you know what doctors make when they first come out of medical school? 100,000. You know what lawyers make coming out of law school? 100,000. So how is it that Schluter is able to pay all of their reps that kind of money? Because their product is way expensive. Their product is extruded from forms, and those forms cost money. But over time, it's kind of a lost. You're making money. You're making a boatload of money, and you're doing no advertising. You'll never see any print ad. You'll never, except in trade magazines, but you'll never hear any commercials on the radio, and you'll never see any TV spots about Schluter. Why? Because the people they send to school to brainwash them are their sales rep, are their sales weasels. And then the sales rep makes all that money sold from all those products. Now, understand, with all those reps in mind and all the machinery and factories that they have to produce the product, they're still making a huge profit. You can Google what their profits are. So I don't have the problem that a company makes money. That's not my issue. My issue is it's not a better product than a liquid topical membrane. Using Schluter and spending $500 to $1,000 worth of material to build a shower doesn't make your shower any better. Doesn't make it better. It makes it more expensive, but it doesn't make it any better. That's my take on it. You know, I have never used any type of cloth membrane. Well, I do use Curdy, a Schluter material, from time to time when it's needed, and I'm not going to get into that, but I do use that material when needed because I Frankenstein showers. Like, I use the material that I believe will cause that shower to last a lifetime. Not what the company thinks, but what I believe, because ultimately I'm responsible, and so is this guy, for the job. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him up because I'll get on my high horse. I'm going to bring him up and I'm going to let it play. I'm going to do some commentary on the very beginning because this is a very typical failure. And I'm going to talk about that during the video, during that first portion. The latter portion, which is exponentially most of the video, where he's actually doing the remediation, where he's actually doing the repair, I'm not going to talk too much because I'm not qualified enough to know about Schluter. I don't know that. I know that he went through the school, and I know that he's kind of married to the product, so my assumption is he's doing it right. But it's not for me to judge because my ignorance about Schluter prevents me from chiming in too much on the product itself and installation and all that stuff because I don't really care. Anyway, I'm going to let this roll. Okay, what you saw on the left side where he showed the paint, let me back it up if I can, where he showed the paint right there up on the left side of his hand, where the paint is kind of peeling off and all that stuff. That's atypical of a curb failure. A curb failure happens because water wicks up into the curb and over it and then into the joining vertical 2x4s or whatever type of wood they put there. And it soaks in water over time. And so that's the telltale sign that you have a curb failure, in addition to what he shows on the right side, because on the right side, apparently he's already torn part of that rotted stuff out. It's a nice shower, though. They spent a boatload of money making this happen. Now, a little bit what he's showing here. Let me explain this. The cracking, the separation that you see from the floor tile away from the curb, that's very atypical of a curb failure also, because the wood expands and contracts and does all kinds of funky things when it's wet. And so that's very atypical, but so is the mold and mildew. The mold and mildew around the perimeter when I'm not going to back it up, but around the perimeter when that mold and mildew and you bleach it out and then it comes back a month later or whatever is very atypical of a wallboard that's embedded into the shower pan. And the shower pan gets wet, wicks into the wallboard, and you're always going to have at the perimeter mold and mildew that you can't get rid of. And there it is, all the mold and mildew at the perimeter. So again, getting back to when I do shower pan redos. When I do shower pan redos, just see the way he removed the frameless glass. That is the best case scenario. I've had customers come to me and it's like, can we do a shower pan redo and remove the frame glass with all the twine and all that stuff that's in? No, I can't do that because those panels and all of that framing material are cut to size. And so I would have to be so on point to make everything fit the way it did. And I'm not learned enough to put all that stuff back. But a frameless shower, yeah, all day long you can take that out because you can do the measurements left to right and know that that's only 2 measurements you have to deal with, and you can put it all back. So this is the best case scenario. And also, if you notice the buttering on top of the curb where they had the curb top on there, there's absolutely no waterproofing. Inside of the curb, outside of the curb, no waterproofing. And then look at this. Look at the mortar buildup. This is all mortar. See what he's got in his hand? That's a piece of mortar. Like literally, they built up the curb. So what you're looking at basically below the pan liner there, because that's all we're looking at right now is that gray pan liner. You're looking at the 2x4s. I think there's only a couple of 2x4s stacked up. It might be 2x6s. Regardless, they didn't even put any type of backer board. It doesn't look to me there's a backer board on there. They just built up thin set to get the height that they needed. Isn't that crazy? That's crazy. That's a huge block of thin set. I've never seen that before. But as much as somebody can do tile really well, they can't build a shower very well. So a tile guy, as opposed to a bathroom remodeler, a tile guy specifically isn't a bathroom remodeler, right? So you can't use the terms interchangeably. And this is very, very atypical of what I see. Let me back up just a few seconds here. This is very atypical of what I see. You open up the liner and you see all that wetness. Whoop, I backed up too far. All right, I'm going to stop it here for just a second. So you see this Durarock because all the mesh that's embedded with Durarock. So that Durarock is actually into the pan, right? So look to the bottom right corner where you see that mesh kind of bent over. That is the Durarock that's embedded into the pan. And so what happens is the moisture content inside of that shower pan mortar permeates. It doesn't go anywhere. All that water wicks left, right, up, down, whatever. And then it gets into that embedded Durarock. And it doesn't matter if it's Durarock. Anything that's porous is going to get into your wallboard. And once your wallboard is wet, your what looks like 2x6s get wet. And then that's where the failure begins. And it wicks over the curb as well. So what I like about this, and this really has nothing to do with the failure, they're going to do a pan redo, right? So when I do a pan redo, I'm extremely careful to only take out the bottom row of tile. And this is a best case scenario because they have the big 12x24 tile to deal with as opposed to a smaller tile. Being very careful not to disturb, not to interrupt any of the tile above you is very, very important. So this guy's taking his time to only get the tile off, and they're going to cut out the backer board later. But that's the only thing that's disrupted. I've had many customers in the past who have gotten estimates from other tile companies like, oh, we're not going to do just the shower pan. We can't be responsible for only the pan. We got to take out the whole shower, because they don't want to make $4 or $5 grand. They want to make 20 grand. So of course they want to take out the whole shower, but why? There's no reason to. So I applaud these guys for only doing what was necessary to do. Perfect. Perfect cutout. And see all that wood rot? That wood rot is the plywood. The moisture that you see is where the curb was taken out, and all that plywood got saturated over time. And again, I don't have any feel as to how long it took, but this started from day one. When they built that shower, it was going to fail. And there's no air down there, so all that moisture can't escape. It just builds up time after time after time. So this is a bit interesting to me. I was a little curious when I first watched this video, because I've only watched it one time, as to why they're cutting out like 3 or 4 inches above the last tile. Because when I replace the backer board, I use my Dremel and I cut out all the backer board all the way up to that tile area. And then I put in new backer board. But what they're going to do is overlap that. You're going to see that later on. All right, so this is interesting too. People constantly go on to YouTube, other YouTubers that do this type of work, and talk about, don't clog your weepholes, don't clog your weepholes, don't clog your weepholes, don't clog your weepholes. I hear it over and over and over again. 2 things about that. One, we don't really care about weepholes anymore because we're doing sealed system. So I don't care if you're using the flow effects drain and a cloth membrane or liquid topical membrane on the flow effects, or if you do it my way and just literally do a liquid topical membrane with some caulking around the edge of the drain. And I've showed that on other videos. You can go on my channel, watch them. We don't worry about weepholes anymore. It's as antiquated as a phone booth. So that being said, it always kind of trips me out that, okay, you're suggesting that water can penetrate into your shower pan mortar everywhere there's a grout line. Everywhere there's a grout line, water can get through that grout line and into your pan mortar, but it can't get through your weepholes. What stops water from getting into your weepholes if they're clogged? And it's not just the weepholes, because you see those big cutouts where the bolts are, and you see the flanges, the cutouts on top of that drain. So all of those areas that are clogged up, so-called clogged up, still can absorb water and still can get past and into the drain later. So I'm not an advocate of, oh, you got to put spacers, which would be the worst thing that you could put around your drain area when you're building a shower, because spacers, by virtue of what they are rubber, and they're not permeable to water at all. Like they're not porous the way rocks would be, but rocks would be the next worst thing, because they're very dense and you don't know how many rocks you're going to put in there and how small they are. That could actually clog your weephole. So even if I were an advocate of not clogging weephole, or even if I were an advocate that I believe clogging weepholes was real, the last thing I would do is rubber spacers or rocks. There is a collar, a plastic collar, weephole protector collar. It's like, I don't know, $15, $20. And I would rather use that if I'm going to do something at all. But he's showing, obviously, that, oh, they clogged their weepholes and therefore water wasn't able to escape. And that's kind of BS. That was very interesting too. Let me show that again. There because I didn't show it or I didn't say anything about it. There's actually below the pan liner, there's Durarock. And I don't understand. I've never quite understood why people put Durarock on their plywood before they put their pan liner. And I've been asked that question before. Should I put Durarock? No. I mean, if you have, a 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch subfloor, which I've seen before, which really trips me out, then yes, you want to sturdy things up, but I wouldn't do it with Durarock. I'd do it with the, girthier plywood. Oh, let me fast forward here. Yeah. So this is the overlap. Let me back up again. See the overlap that he's doing? And when I say overlap, well, actually he's marrying up the old backer board to the new Schluter backer board. And so I'm going to go forward and let this play and kind of like bow out for a moment, because this is the part I want you to see. These guys are so on point with doing their remediation. Even though I don't believe or trust Schluter, and these guys do, they've done it, in my opinion, the best job possible, except that I would have all the seams covered with Aqua Defense, Hydroban, Red Guard, some type of water proofer, rather than relying on thin set. But that's just me. One of the things that I want to comment on real quick on this particular part of the video, these mosaic tile, river rock, or any type of mosaic that you're dealing with, kind of fits like a puzzle. So what he's doing is he's switching around the four sides of each one of these tile to make sure that it fits, so that there's not a definitive line that's going to show after he sets it and grouts it and all that stuff. And that's extremely important. And I give kudos to him for taking the time to actually figure that out, rather than just laying the tile willy-nilly, because they're not created equal. And depending on how much money you spend for mosaic is what the quality you're going to get and how well things fit. A typical mosaic like this is going to be about $20 up. If you spend $5, $6, $7, $8, $10 for a mosaic, it's garbage, and you'll never match it up perfectly. But it's still imperative that you take the time to make all the ends meet the way they're supposed to. In addition to the fact that he's already done his layout and knows exactly left to right and front to back how many tile he's going to need, and then he cuts off the ends of them, because there's nothing more of a pain in the ass than trying to put little tiny pieces in when you put the full pieces in. So you run these mosaic through a tile saw on the edge and get those flat so that it fits perfectly later. I'm going to fast forward through this section a little bit. Couple things I want to talk about. First of all, you see the lines where he's, let me back up just for a couple of seconds if I can. See the lines there where he troweled out? Where he troweled out his fence set on the wall? That's the direction you want it to go. Because if you elongate your lines, it's a lot harder for air to escape. And when you press your tile up against those lines, you want air to escape. So it's easier on the 12-inch section top to bottom than it would be elongated. So I love the way that the lines are on point. And then he's back buttering his tile to get good adhesion. Now, having said that, he's using a vibrator. That's what that little noise is. He's using a vibrator, which we're doing on extra large format tile, say, a 5x5, or they're huge now. And yes, a vibrator is probably a good idea. That he's using a vibrator on a 12x24, Now, the only thing I take issue with, you're going to see this in a few minutes. The only thing I take issue with is that he grouts everything all at once. Whereas what I do is once the floor tile is set, and you see there's really no distinctive lines, and that's why I was saying earlier it's important to match up all four sides to make sure that little puzzle fits perfectly so you're not seeing lines of each 12-inch section. Grouting the entire floor first is the way I do it. Then I overlap my wall tile onto a grouted, like, for example, there's probably, I don't know, it's not a whole lot, but there's probably an inch of that floor tile that's not grouted at all, that's being hidden by the wall tile, which is why I grout the floor tile first. Other than that, perfect. All right, I'm gonna chime in on something here real quick, and then I'm gonna back up to another thing I want to talk about. The first thing is, let me back up to that first, if I can. When he's putting that contiguous curb top down, where's it at right there? I think it's right here. You're going to see the overhang. There's an overhang going on. So the only issue that I take, if you go back to the very beginning video, there's an overhang as well. And the overhang is about 1/2 inch on the inside and 1/2 inch on the outside. In the very beginning of the video, you're going to see that same overhang. These curb tops are 6 inches wide, and your final curb is about 5.5. So you're going to end up with a 1/4 inch overhang on the front and the back. Or you could have a flush outside of the curb with your tile, with the face of your curb tile to your curb top, and then have an 1/2 inch overhang on the inside. Conversely, and the way I do it is he could easily put another 1/2 inch backer board, whatever he uses, onto the inside of the curb so that he could get that 6 inches flush on the outside and the inside. That's the only thing I take issue with there. Now, as far as, and we're going to get past the grouting, as far as what he's doing here is he's spraying down his silicone. So he's siliconing all the planes of change, right? So he siliconed right there in the corner where his hand is pointing, and he siliconed at the bottom. And that's why he has that spray bottle, so that he can get a nice bead of silicone going on. Now, having said that, I think it's the worst idea in the world to silicone change of planes like that. I don't caulk any change of planes, because what you're doing is trying to prevent water from getting in there, which is relevant because everything should be waterproof below, but you're also trying to prevent movement, right? So if there's movement in that corner, in that vertical corner where the change of planes are at, if there's movement, you're mitigating that by putting caulking there. But in probably 85–90% of situations, you're never going to have cracking. You're never going to have separation in those corners. And I can tell you that because I've had a couple of showers I built for myself. One was 12 years old, and I never had any separation in the corner. So there's no reason to do any caulking. But the last thing I would ever do is silicone. And the reason I know that, I worked in the apartment business for many, many years, and it's very, very difficult to take silicone out. And silicone is always going to get mold and mildew behind it over time. So the homeowner is now stuck trying to tear out all that old silicone, which is a real pain in the ass, as opposed to latex caulking, which is a lot easier. And they do the same thing. So I'm not an advocate of silicone caulking. So that's the only little drawback that I see here. And there's an overhang I was talking about. It's just there's a little overhang on the front and overhang on the inside of that curb top, and I would rather have it flush. And then of course, like I said, the silicone. He's doing an outstanding job. I give him his kudos again because this guy's on point with everything he's doing. He's a perfectionist. I like it. And then the glass goes back. Of course, the water drains. You got a foam pre-slope pan. So yeah, the water is going to drain, of course. Outstanding. This, and again, getting back to what I said, when I started this video, this guy's right on point. Right on point. I appreciate when I watch a video of another tile guy doing things so good. So good. Like he's not skipping, he's not just trying to get the job done, he's trying to do a good job. And I appreciate that talent, and I appreciate the motivation that he has to make it right. Like given what he was given, which is this leaky shower pan curb, as it were. And then recording that stuff is important too, because that also lets the homeowner know that you've done the job right. So you have a history, you can go back on a video. So I like everything about this guy. I don't remember. Let me go back to the video. If you want to like and subscribe and do all those things on his channel, please do, because he's really on point. I think he's just starting out on YouTube also. I don't remember how old his latest video was, but he has another video where he kind of smacks back on Isaac, tile coach, as it were. Because this experiment video that he did, I'm not going to bother playing it because it'll take up too much time. But this experiment he did, basically, he's taking pieces of Schluter and he's putting thin set on it and blah, blah, blah. And he's got a little piece of cardboard in the center of these little pieces, and then he soaks it in water and all that stuff to see if that cardboard in the center will get wet. And only the edges got wet. My contention is that thin set is not waterproof, and therefore the Schluter material can't be waterproof. The Schluter material is waterproof, but the adhesion of the material itself is not. So therefore it can't be waterproof. One negates the other. That's my take on it. What Isaac does is, I think what this guy is referencing when he's kind of clapping back on Isaac, is that he's saying the thin set should be so thin, and also the type of thin set matters, that it's a molecular adhesion. So you're trying to push out as much thin set as possible, and then the chemical reaction between the two fleece material where you do the overlap with the little bit of thin set is making it waterproof. There's a video that this guy is so smart. When you're walking around, say you got 10 people around you, right? And you're like, I'm smarter than at least 4 of these people. There's 6 others that are smarter than me, but I'm smarter than these 4 people, or whatever the math happens to be. If I was in this guy's presence, I would, in 10 people and he was there, I would feel like the bottom. I would feel like number 1 or 2. This guy is so smart. He's a carpenter by trade, but he breaks down also what I'm talking about, Isaac's videos. And if you look on his original video, you're going to see all the pushback that even people that subscribe to Isaac push back, because this guy breaks it down in such a scientific way of Schluter and how it works and why the failures that he had were failures that were almost intentional. Because Isaac's smart, but he's nowhere near as smart as this guy. That's going to be another video coming up very soon. I'm going to do a commentary on that. I probably won't do a commentary. I'll do a little bit, but I'm going to let this guy speak through the video because he does it much better. Anyway, I digress. Getting back to this particular guy, this experiment that he did, you can go find on his channel, and that's the same type of pushback that he had, because he was, I'm not saying not trusting Schluter, but he was questioning Schluter's ability to repel water based on thinset alone, which is why I don't like Schluter material. Because if you watch this video, you'll see everything he used weighed maybe 10 pounds, maybe 10 pounds. He had a foam pan, he had a foam curb, he used sheet membrane around the sides and all that stuff, and everything was foam and plastic, and it's all adhered with thinset. And I just can't get on board with that. I'm sorry, I just can't. Having said that, he did an outstanding job. If anybody knows enough about Schluter to chime in and let me know your thoughts on his job doing the Schluter, the only thing I would have done different if I were capable of doing what he did, if I was interested in doing what he did, is I would overlap everything with a liquid topical membrane. Then again, it's kind of overkill, because why would I choose to put wallpaper and thinset and all this stuff when I can just easily RedGuard, Hydroban, Aqua Defense, 8+9? Like, there's so many liquid topical membranes out there that it's just easier and faster to do it that way, which is where I'm coming from on the whole thing. But anyway, I'm going to end the video. Somebody talked about my disappearing cup because I have a green screen and my cup is green, so it kind of disappears. You see, just disappears. Isn't that cool? So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, go to this guy's channel. I'm going to back up to the beginning so that you can get his information. A good kid. He's really on point. You know, insofar, there's been some people, even customers that I've had, it's like, ooh, you're very knowledgeable, you'd be a good helper. This guy wouldn't be my helper. We would be working together if I knew him. If I lived in the Chicago area and I knew him, we would be working together and we would be learning and teaching each other. That's how good he is at a young age. Imagine this guy in 10 years from now. So yeah, I give kudos where they're due, and you know, this guy is just very, very, very good at what he does. Anyway, let me back up to that video. Let me bring him up again. Whoops, I just removed it. Oh, crud. There he is. Let me back up to the very beginning. Okay, so yeah, Aquarius Tile. That's his screen name on YouTube. So yeah, go there and like and subscribe and do all that stuff and watch some of his content. He's on point. So yeah, that's all I have to say. And that other video with that science guy, this wizard of, I don't know, you know, him, and I didn't watch all of his videos because most of it's about carpentry, but he knew what he was talking about when he did this video on thinset and Curdy. And anyway, that video is going to come up probably in the next week or two. So stay tuned, subscribe, like, share, do all that thing. It doesn't cost anything to hit that like button, and it does help me. Anyway, have a good one, guys, and we will see you on the next one. And yeah, tile on. If you're going to call me for advice, please donate $50 for 30 minutes. My link to my PayPal and my Patreon account is down below. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so you get immediate notifications as soon as I post videos. And thank you very much for your support.